Yo, it's me again, back with latest movie stories. Today I'm taking you all into the most iconic apocalypse that turned the city of London utterly silent and empty. Just like your heart that's been single for way too long. We're going to break down the masterpiece film titled 28 Days Later. Alright then, no more beating around the bush, let's jump straight into it. And if you enjoy this channel, as always, feel free to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on more great videos only from latest movie stories. The film opens with three masked activists sneaking like burglars into a secret laboratory located in London. They are horrified to witness cruel experiments being conducted on a group of chimpanzees by a team of scientists. We are introduced to Rick, the biggest animal advocate of the group, who immediately breaks down in tears at the sight of the chimpanzees' suffering. Not wanting to waste any time, Rick urges his companions to set the chimps free right away. But just then, a scientist catches them in the middle of their reckless act. We are introduced to a scientist named David, who begs them not to open the cages. The chimpanzees have been exposed to an extreme strain of rabies that can infect humans. However, Sal and the other activists dismiss his warning as nothing more than a hoax.
No! No! Listen, you say. Stop! Stop! Listen now! We have to kill him now!
These activists' arrogant, self-righteous, and misguidedly heroic actions end up unleashing the most terrifying virus the world has ever known, setting it loose to spread far and wide. Fast forward, 28 days later. The scene shifts to a man said to bear a slight resemblance to the father of the atomic bomb. Meet Jim. He has just woken up after a long coma in an empty hospital.
Hello?
Much like Rick's story in The Walking Dead, Jim sees the hospital is in total chaos and wanders around looking for any doctors or nurses. But there is no sign of anyone at all.
Hello?
Outside, Jim is even more bewildered as he sees how utterly quiet London is. It really feels like the strictest lockdown imaginable, times 1,000. When he reaches the city square, Jim is further unsettled by the sheer number of missing person posters scattered everywhere. Realizing something terrible is going on, he hurries onward to find answers. Jim is instantly terrified when two figures suddenly rise from the piles of bodies scattered inside an old church.
Father.
Realizing something is very wrong, he runs for his life as fast as his legs can carry him. Amidst the chaos, Jim is lucky to be rescued by two incredibly tough survivors. Finally, thanks to their help, Jim makes it out alive. They immediately take him to a safe hiding place.
Come on! Man walks into a bar with a giraffe.
We are introduced to Selena and Mark. Selena explains that 28 days ago, a strange virus spread rapidly, turning people violent and brutal. This so-called supercharged rabies infects humans through bites and blood. Shockingly, it only takes 20 seconds for an ordinary person to turn into a feral zombie. The latest reports say the virus has even reached France and the United States. It turns out those activists' reckless arrogance is what brought about the apocalypse. Horrified by this news, Jim sets off to check on his family. The next morning, they walk together to his home. As soon as he arrives, a sharp stench of decay hits him, and he rushes inside to find his loved ones. Jim is absolutely devastated when he finds his parents' bodies. They took a massive overdose of medication out of despair at the coming zombie apocalypse. He breaks down in tears as he reads their final note, a message filled with utter hopelessness. That afternoon, Selena says Jim's parents likely died peacefully, spared from being chased down by monsters. As they talk, Mark shares the horror of the attack his own family faced, an onslaught like a tidal wave of rage, too terrifying to put into words. That night, while Mark and Selena are asleep, Jim sits engrossed watching old videos of his family.
It's empty.
The noise from the video draws a horde of zombies straight to them. Fortunately, Selena and Mark quickly pull Jim to safety. Selena even points her weapon at him for a moment, afraid he's been bitten, but thankfully, Jim is unharmed. But right then, Mark notices a bite mark on his arm and panics. Tragically, because of Jim's foolish mistake of playing videos late at night, the kind-hearted Mark has to be killed by Selena with a machete, for she knows he will turn any moment now. Amidst the horror, Selena immediately hurries Jim away before more zombies arrive. As they wander aimlessly, Jim suddenly spots a light glowing from one of the apartment windows.
What is it about Toby?
Now, I do need a break.
They had barely stopped to rest when they suddenly heard the sound of approaching zombies.
Oh no, they're in.
Wait for me, please!
Amidst the panic, a man calls out to them to get inside his room right away.
Go in. Go in.
They are finally safe, and we are introduced to a man named Frank, who then introduces his lovely daughter, Hannah. While offering them drinks, Frank is overjoyed to see that others have survived the disaster. In a warm gesture, he invites them to rest and freshen up. Make yourselves at home. The next day, Frank picks up a military broadcast on the radio announcing that a safe zone has been established in Manchester. Spreading out a map, they decide to head there, especially since they don't want to be trapped here when the zombies finally break through. Setting off in a beat-up car that looks just like Mr. Bean's, Frank and the others head straight for Manchester, passing piles of bodies strewn all along the way. Seeing piles of bodies and abandoned cars blocking the tunnel, Jim gets a bad feeling and asks Frank to take a detour. But since they've already come this far, Frank decides to step on the gas and push through. But as bad luck would have it, Frank's reckless driving blows out a tire. Not wanting to waste time, he hurries to change it. Before Hannah can even properly set up the jack, Jim panics as he hears a deafening roar drawing near.
Right, I've done it.
Selena spots the horde of zombies closing in and immediately screams for Frank and Jim to run. They narrowly escape death just in time. Along the way, they stop at a supermarket to scavenge supplies.
Decaffeinated coffee.
Once they've gathered enough, they hurry to continue their journey. That evening, after a long journey, Jim and the others decide to rest and eat their supplies. In the quiet moment, they agree to spend the night here and set off again the next day. The next morning, Jim oversleeps and rushes frantically when he sees his companions are already ready to leave. When they reach the outskirts of Manchester, they check the area and are baffled. There isn't a single soul around. Convinced the city is completely lost, they urge Frank to leave immediately. However, Frank, deeply disappointed, looks frustrated and laments their misfortune. Overcome with irritation, he tries to shoo away the crows pecking at a zombie corpse. His own carelessness costs him dearly. Frank gets infected when a drop of blood splashes into his eye. As Hannah steps closer, Frank begs his daughter to stay away.
What's wrong? Infected! No!
Realizing Frank is infected, a panicked Selena urges Jim to put him down immediately before the 20 seconds are up. Hannah is utterly devastated as she watches her father die right before her eyes. Moments later, a military unit arrives late and evacuates Jim and the others to the safe zone.
1 male, 2 female.
Upon arrival, they are greeted by Major Henry West, who immediately leads them into the mansion, the only surviving stronghold in all of Manchester. Jim can hardly believe such a safe haven still exists. Meanwhile, Selena, who has grown fond of Jim, can barely resist the urge to kiss him. As Henry shows Jim around, he explains that the compound has layered defenses and is heavily guarded by his men. They've even laid landmines just in case the zombies come back.
Will you put that back?
In the kitchen, Henry complains that they are short on cooks, since everyone here is male.
Meet Mailer.
When they reach the drying yard, Jim is alarmed as Henry introduces his infected soldier, Miller. Miller was infected 2 days ago and is deliberately kept chained up while they conduct experiments to find out if these zombies can survive without food. That evening, they hold a shared meal to thank Jim for bringing so much food in his car. But just after their very first bite, they are thrown into panic by the sudden sound of an attack. Fortunately, with their well-equipped gear, they fend off the zombie attack with relative ease.
Look, we're grateful.
Before long, over drinks, Henry reveals a dark secret. The real reason he broadcast that emergency message was to lure survivors, specifically women. They need women for logistics, but that's not all. The men here are starved for company and comfort. So much so that even their bars of soap have been worn right through. He then tells Jim to cooperate when Selena and Hannah are passed around to satisfy his men's desires. Jim is absolutely horrified. Refusing to let them be exploited, he immediately sets off to get the two girls and escape.
Where is it, Jim?
We have to go. Come on!
Unfortunately, he is struck down before he can do anything. Meanwhile, Sergeant Farrell tries to stop his comrade's savage intentions, but he is outnumbered and eventually overpowered. The next day, Jim and Farrell are marched to the dumping ground to be executed. Upon arriving at the execution site, Farrell tries to reason with them, urging them to repent, especially in the middle of a zombie apocalypse like this. Right in the heat of their argument,
Tell me what you want to say, do ya?
luckily Jim seizes the chance to escape. Exhausted from running, he collapses mid-flight, only to spot a still-functioning plane and feel hope return. Meanwhile, the soldiers force Selena to change into more appealing clothes. At their insistence, she tells them to leave, promising she will change of her own free will. But once they were gone, Selena, determined to spare young Hannah the same agony she had endured, slipped a sedative to the girl. Unfortunately, the soldiers caught her in the act. They threw the drugs away, sneering that they had no interest in riding a dead log. Just as tensions reached breaking point, they suddenly panicked at the blare of a siren. It turns out the sound came from Jim, who planned to lure the zombie horde to break through the soldiers' defenses. While the soldiers rushed to check the perimeter, Jim scouted the area. Suddenly, bang! Jim outwits and takes down one of the soldiers hunting for him. Meanwhile, Henry returns to his car and is puzzled to find his sentry standing frozen, only to realize the guard is already dead. Sensing something is very wrong, he hurries back to the mansion. That night, Jim releases Miller, the zombie they had been experimenting on, to distract the soldiers. Inside the mansion, Selena and Hannah have been dressed in red gowns before the abuse begins. Hannah says she is utterly heartbroken that the soldiers who were supposed to protect civilians have instead given in to their base instincts. And then, amidst the pouring rain, the nightmare begins.
Stay with that, Hannah. Stay with it.
Jim is satisfied as his plan plunges everything into total chaos. Moments later, we see a soldier named Jonas, terrified and scrambling for safety. Like Ghostface, Jim suddenly emerges and eliminates Jonas. Without a second to spare, he hurries to find Selena and Hannah. Meanwhile, Henry arrives to find his headquarters completely destroyed and is utterly stunned. Fortunately, thanks to some solid plot armor, Hannah survives being hunted by the infected soldiers.
I haven't got any bullets.
Moments later, Jim sees Selena being held captive and immediately strikes without mercy. In the end, the soldier Mike meets his end when Jim gouges his eyes out with his thumbs. Once they are all reunited, Jim immediately leads Selena and Hannah to flee the deadly mansion without delay. Upon reaching the car, Jim panics once more. Henry is already waiting there, gun pointed straight at him. But thanks to a clever move by Hannah, Henry ends up as a feast for the zombies instead. Hannah slams on the gas and speeds away from that cursed place as fast as she can. To cut a long story short, 28 days later, Jim, Selena, and Hannah now live in a remote village far from civilization. Moments later, spotting a plane flying overhead, Hannah hurries to get Jim and Selena to spread out a large cloth that reads, "Hello."
You've definitely heard of that, man.
Yeah.
Like kids begging for pocket money, they successfully catch the plane's attention and call for help. At last, they are saved, and the film finally comes to an end. And there you have it, the bloody, tearful, and twist-filled journey of 28 days later. The moral of the story is crystal clear. Don't be reckless, never open cages or mess with unknown objects. And if someone gets bitten, well, you know exactly what to do. If this story kept you glued to the screen from start to finish, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share it with your zombie movie-loving friends. Who knows, it might even help them be more careful around fake news or things they don't understand. That's all from me for now. See you in the next epic movie recap, only here at Latest Movie Stories. Stay safe and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.